you know, when you go to other places, like I was just in West Africa, I was in Senegal and in Mauritania, and you know, I think it's really important for us to get our kids over to places to do work in other communities and places to see the reality. I'll give you an example. I had a friend of mine. I teach a course at a junior college nearby with a friend, and she was having trouble controlling this class because they were just, you know, they're college kids behaving like high school kids. So I suggested that she bring in a friend of mine who was a leading member of one of the dominant African-American gangs in LA, went to prison for murder, spent several years in prison, and he converted, transformed his life in prison. He came out, he's actually a teacher now. So I suggested that she bring him into the class. And she did, and she just said the transformation in these students was amazing, with him telling his story. And you know, I tell them, this junior college, if you were in Kabul in Afghanistan, this would be the Harvard of Afghanistan. You know, and we have people in a lot of countries that literally commit suicide because their scores are too low to get into the colleges. You know, so it's amazing the opportunities. If you look at, when people come here from places like African countries, the first thing they do is enroll in junior colleges. It's just, you know, it's just so amazing for them to be able to get an education that doesn't cost very much. And so I think part of it is really trying to inculcate this early on. Narcissism was, you know, it was, I think, it was designated in the 1970s in that famous book, The Culture of Narcissism. You know, he saw something that nobody was seeing at the time, how narcissistic our culture was coming. I think the selfie is just such an indicative aspect of our civilization. This idea of just taking your own picture. You know, I've never carried a camera. I've never taken pictures. I don't have any pictures of myself. I've been all over the world. I've been in the, you know, I met the Pope, you know, and had a picture with the Pope. And, you know, I've just never had that urge to have these pictures. You know, my wife, because some people send us things and she wants to put them up. I said, I don't want them on the wall. You know, I don't want to do that. And I don't get that thing about pictures. You know, like for me, this is where I take my pictures. I try to be present with people and remember them as best I can. And I learned this from the Bedouin, because what really struck me about the Bedouin that I lived with is they were so present. And I would meet a Bedouin that I'd met 10 years before. He would remember what we talked about, the conversation we had. And they don't take pictures because they know. And so this whole obsession with images, the New York Times recently reported that the average American sees more images in one day than a 19th century English person saw in his entire lifetime. And these images are flooding our hearts. We're losing that space. You know, the imageless space. You know, one of the things when Trajan went into the holiest of holies, the thing that really disturbed him was there was nothing in there. You know, and he wanted the Jews to explain, like, where's your idols? Where's your images? It's an empty place. And so that emptiness, we have to have that emptiness to be able to contemplate. And I would recommend reading Neil Postman's incredible book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, and that second chapter about why the Decalogue would have prohibited images. Because he argues that if you want people to understand abstractions, you have to watch out for the images that you give them. And God wants us to know something, a concept that is so abstract. And this is why image-based cultures become debased very quickly. So I really think the images are harming us immensely. The pornographic images that are going into the minds of these young kids, it's really terrifying, because they can't get these things out. They won't be able to get those images out of their mind. And I know this from, I have people that have converted to Islam or have these problems, and they've told me when they open their prayer, images start flooding and they want to get rid of them. So it's really difficult. Spiritually, it can be done with a lot of work, but you have to be careful what you put into your heart. And I was with a Bedouin. We'd gone from the desert to Nouakchott, and there was a TV in the room, and it was on, and he was looking the other way. And he was a man in his 30s, and he was a student of knowledge. And he was looking the other way, and I was with a Libyan, Abdurrazak Mukhtar. He's the ambassador in Turkey now for Libya. But he asked him, have you ever seen television? He said, no. He said, don't you want to look at it? And he said, I heard that it has foul things on it, and I don't want to let it into my heart. And that level of being is just, where are those people? So, just to preface this, they were all very interesting poems. This one was the one that hit me the most, just in terms of my talk and what I think the Festival of Faith is about. So it's called What Worship Is. It's by Red Hawk from Arizona. I don't think that he doesn't have internet access, which I thought was great. The other poems, the Pilgrimage to Mont Saint Victor was really, I really liked that. Prairie Hours and Hymn to Morning were the runners-up, and they were all good. And the other ones were good too. They were more depressing. But this one I thought really captured something for me. What Worship Is by Red Hawk from Arizona. At dusk, Cousin John is driving home when a rabbit darts in front of his car and is thrown, tumbling and spinning, into the tall grass beyond the shoulder. Now here is where John emerges from the pack of ordinary, brutish humans and assumes a form we barely know. He stops the car, pulls off to see what harm he has done. I don't know anyone else who would have stopped. He finds the rabbit broken and thrashing, not yet dead in the tall grass. Goes to his trunk for a hammer, returns, and finishes what chance started. Then, with the claw part, he digs a shallow hole and puts the body in, returns, drives home. Heavy with sorrow, feeling remorse, having performed his humble sacrament to make right what has gone wrong in us, we have forgotten who we are and what we must do.